The night before their 25th wedding anniversary, Naomi Sterling lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan's slow rotation. Each turn of the blades seemed to echo a thought she'd been trying to silence for weeks. Something isn't right. Her husband, Darren Price, had fallen asleep beside her, or pretended to. His breaths were uneven, forced. Then, almost on cue, the faint glow of his phone flickered beneath the blanket. He whispered into it, careful and measured, as if the darkness itself could betray him. Naomi closed her eyes and listened. "We have to handle this perfectly," Darren murmured. "Don't worry, son," came Celeste Price's velvet voice on speaker. The same tone that once passed for affection. "She'll never see it coming." Naomi's stomach tightened. They meant her. And whatever this was, it wasn't love. At dawn, she brewed coffee strong enough to wake a ghost. Darren emerged freshly showered, humming, and kissed her cheek like a teenager in love. "How about we plan something big for our anniversary?" he said. Almost theatrical. "I want everything to be perfect." Perfect. The word scraped at her nerves. He had never cared for anniversaries. He'd always said celebrations were a waste of money for sentimental people. Now, suddenly, the man was all smiles and scented cologne. When he rushed out to meet a client, Naomi's gaze landed on the phone he forgot on the nightstand. A notification blinked. 11 a.m. call S. Her hand trembled as she watered the plants. "Who's S?" she asked casually when he returned later. For a brief second, Darren froze, then came the twitch. His left eye always gave him away. "Oh, Sanchez, work buddy from Seattle." Naomi smiled sweetly. Of course. But her heart already knew the truth. That evening, while the sky bruised into a gray Georgetown dusk, Naomi heard a knock at the door. Celeste Price stood there, wrapped in a designer coat that whispered money and judgment. "Naomi, dear," she said, sweeping in without waiting to be invited. "Preparing for the big day?" "Almost," Naomi answered. "Darren wants dinner at a restaurant." Celeste's lips curved into something between approval and pity. "Ah, yes, a proper venue for such a respectable couple. Home parties feel provincial, don't you think?" Naomi poured tea, steadying her hand. She'd spent decades perfecting the art of smiling through insult. "Tell me," Celeste said after a sip, "have you considered writing a will? Darren isn't getting any younger. And well, with no children, it would be nice to think of future generations." Naomi set her cup down, porcelain clinking. "Future generations?" she asked softly. "We have none, Celeste." "Oh, for my nephews, of course." The older woman waved. "Good boys, both studying hard. It's only practical. And by the way," her eyes darted toward the cabinet, "where do you keep the condo papers? You never know what might happen." That sentence landed like a blade hidden in silk. When Celeste finally left, the apartment felt colder. Naomi stood by the window, watching the fog swallow the city skyline. "They're planning something," she thought. The late-night calls, the sudden affection, the probing questions about property. The puzzle pieces aligned into a picture of betrayal. She went to Darren's office. He had always used the same password for everything, the date they met. It didn't work anymore. Her pulse quickened. He changed it. After half an hour of guesses, she typed their wedding date backward. Access granted. On the screen, browser tabs glowed like confessions. How to divorce when shared assets exist. Legal ways to keep the condo in a divorce. Property division strategies for husbands. Her hands shook. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Then the phone rang. "Naomi, you won't believe what I saw," her friend Candace blurted. "Your husband, at a jewelry store, with some blonde half his age. They were picking rings." The words blurred together. Rings. Hugging. Laughing. Naomi pressed a hand to her chest. "Thank you, Candace," she whispered. "That means a lot." When Darren came home that night, he carried roses and chocolates. "For my one and only," he said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Naomi looked straight at him. "We need to talk about our future." He froze for an instant, then forced a chuckle. Can we not? Let's keep the mood light. The big day's next week. We'll talk after the party. After the party. That phrase echoed like a threat. The following morning, Naomi sat in silence as Darren left early again. An hour later, the home phone beeped, an old answering machine picking up a call. It's Mom. Mr. Hayes can arrange everything. Just make sure she doesn't suspect until the last moment. Mr. Hayes. So, Sanchez, was a lie, too. Naomi's knees weakened. They're staging everything, my own husband, his mother, and a lawyer. She reached for Darren's phone. Locked with a 6-digit code. She tried his birthday. No. Celeste's. No. Then she remembered the blonde. A hunch. March 8th. International Women's Day. Unlocked. The text thread made her throat burn. Sierra. My love. After the anniversary, will the condo finally be ours? Darren. Everything's on track. Mom handled the papers. She doesn't suspect a thing. Naomi's hands trembled as she saved screenshots. Every word was evidence. By afternoon, she sat in her car outside her friend Aisha Cole's office. Aisha was a lawyer, clever, sharp-tongued, loyal since college. Long time. Naomi. Aisha smiled, sensing the tension. What brings you here? Let's just say a friend of mine's husband is plotting something ugly. When Naomi finished telling everything, Aisha leaned back. He wants to trap you emotionally. Make you sign under pressure. Don't give him that chance. Gather proof, secure your money, and act normal. They must believe you're still blind. Naomi nodded, relief breaking through the fear. She finally had a plan, and an ally. That night, Darren criticized her looks, told her she'd let herself go, and suggested cosmetic fixes. Every word felt rehearsed, a villain's script pretending to sound helpful. But Naomi just smiled faintly. Keep talking, Darren. The more you show me who you are, the stronger I become. At midnight, when he finally snored beside her, Naomi opened her laptop. She reread the letter from Germany, her late Aunt Josephine's will. It confirmed she was the sole heir to a fortune, a condo in Munich, another in Miami Beach, and bank accounts totaling over $3 million. A week ago, she'd planned to surprise Darren with that news on their anniversary. Now, she realized the gift had become her shield. They think they're setting a trap, she thought, but I'm the one writing the ending. As the first light of dawn painted the sky pink, Naomi finally smiled. Tomorrow, she'd start turning their perfect plan into dust. The next morning, Naomi Sterling walked into the sunlight with the calm precision of someone who had already made up her mind. She wasn't the same woman who had once trembled at her husband's late-night whispers. Now, each step she took had purpose. Her first destination was the office of Mr. Perry, a soft-spoken, old-fashioned real estate lawyer who had handled the title to their Georgetown condo decades earlier. When he saw her enter, his face brightened. Naomi Sterling, my goodness, it's been years. How's Darren doing these days? Naomi gave a careful smile. That's actually what I'm here about. Mr. Perry, I need a favor, and complete confidentiality. The tone in her voice erased the warmth in his expression. He nodded solemnly. Say no more. Tell me what you need. She leaned forward. The condo on M Street. Can you check whose name it's really under? I remember my parents transferred the money directly to your trust back then. Mr. Perry rifled through dusty files, flipping through old pages until he found the one he needed. His eyebrows lifted. Well, now, this is interesting. The purchase was indeed funded by your parents, and the deed of gift lists you as the sole owner. Your husband's name was added 2 months later. But that doesn't change the original gift status. It's considered premarital property. Naomi's pulse quickened. So legally, the condo is yours, he confirmed. He can't touch it unless he proves he made major investments. Which, knowing Darren, I doubt he did. Naomi exhaled slowly, her composure finally cracking into a relieved smile. Can I have a copy of that confirmation? Absolutely. I'll prepare the document by tomorrow. As she left his office, she felt lighter, not because the battle was over, but because she finally had armor. By the time Naomi reached home, a courier was waiting by the door with a thick envelope stamped from Germany. Inside lay the official inheritance documents from her late Aunt Josephine. A condo in Munich worth nearly $800. A Miami Beach penthouse valued at $1.6 million. And $500,000 in savings. More wealth than she ever imagined. Naomi sat in silence for a long time, staring at the papers. Once, she had thought of sharing everything with Darren, a way to rekindle what was lost. Now, those same documents were her escape route. When her phone rang, Darren's voice came through Syrup Sweet. "Naomi, my love, how about we make our anniversary unforgettable? I've already booked the ballroom at the Watergate Hotel. 100 guests, colleagues, family, everyone." Naomi almost laughed. "He wants an audience for my destruction." "That's quite the event," she said evenly. "Isn't it a little expensive?" "Don't worry," he said breezily. "It's worth it. Appearances matter." Appearances. The word oozed irony. Later that afternoon, Celeste Price appeared again, this time clutching an envelope as if bearing royal decree. "Naomi, dear," she said in her sweetest imitation of warmth. "This is for you." Naomi opened it. Inside was a business card embossed with Hayes and Associates, Family Law and Property Division. The same lawyer from Darren's phone. "He's excellent," Celeste chirped, "just in case you ever need advice. You never know when life changes suddenly." Naomi smiled thinly. "How thoughtful of you. Oh, and I wanted to say, I'm so proud of how gracefully you've handled everything. You've always been such a composed woman. Composed enough to survive your son's betrayal," Naomi thought. When Celeste finally left, Naomi tore the business card in half and tossed it into the trash. That evening, Darren returned home smelling of a perfume Naomi didn't own. "Big day coming up," he said cheerfully, straightening his tie. "Got everything ready, music, catering, even the speech." "A speech?" she asked quietly. "Of course, I want to honor our years together," he said, eyes gleaming with mischief. Naomi looked at him, really looked at him. The man who once made her laugh under the rain now looked like a stranger wearing her husband's skin. "You're right, Darren," she said softly. "It's going to be unforgettable." That night, while Darren showered, Naomi checked their joint bank account. Nearly $30,000 had vanished, all withdrawn in pieces. The notes on the transactions said things like gift purchase and consultation fees. He was financing his betrayal with her own money. She laughed bitterly and whispered to herself, "Let him dig his grave. I'll bring the flowers." Then, opening a secure folder on her computer, Naomi transferred half of their joint funds into a new private account, one only she could access. When Darren came out of the shower, he was humming again. "You're quiet tonight," he said. "Just tired," she replied. "Good," he smiled. "You'll need your energy for tomorrow." Tomorrow, the showtime, Naomi thought. The next morning began with rain, a soft, cleansing drizzle that seemed almost poetic. Naomi dressed in a navy blue suit, pinned her hair neatly, and visited the German consulate. The official reviewed her inheritance documents, nodded approvingly, and stamped them. "Everything is now formally yours, Mrs. Sterling," he said in accented English. "Congratulations." She walked out into the wet morning, feeling like she had just signed her freedom. By noon, Naomi had opened 2 personal accounts, one in dollars, another in euros. She was now, officially, a wealthy and independent woman, though she didn't feel like celebrating. Not yet. At 3 p.m., she stopped by the Watergate Hotel to check on the arrangements her husband had made. The lobby gleamed with marble and crystal chandeliers. Naomi found the event manager, a kind woman named Liza. "I'm Mrs. Price," Naomi introduced herself. "My husband booked the ballroom for tomorrow." "Oh, yes, it's going to be magnificent," Liza said warmly. 100 guests, full-course menu, live quartet, everything first class. "How much does it all cost?" Naomi asked. "About $45,000. Paid in full." Naomi smiled tightly. 45,000 for my public execution. As she walked out, she nearly collided with a tall, polished blonde woman speaking on her phone. Yes, I love the place. The woman purred. Tomorrow everyone will see us together. It'll be the start of our new life. Naomi froze. The voice, the name, Sierra. She stood only a few feet away, admiring her reflection in the hotel's glass door. Naomi approached her calmly. Excuse me, do you know where the event manager is? Sierra turned, looked her up and down like an insect. No idea, she said coldly, and turned back to her phone. Some woman's bothering me. Anyway, I'll see you tonight. Love you. Some woman. Naomi's lips curled into the faintest smile. You will, she whispered under her breath. But not the way you expect. That evening, Darren was pacing by the mirror when she returned home, trying on ties and practicing facial expressions. You look nervous, Naomi said. Big day nerves, he replied quickly. It's not every day you close one chapter and start another. She caught that phrasing, close one chapter. He wasn't talking about a party. He was talking about her. Celeste arrived moments later, glowing with excitement. My son, she said, patting Darren's shoulder. Your speech will be perfect. I'm so proud of you. Mom, Darren whispered, what if she reacts badly? She won't, Celeste said confidently. She'll sit there, smile, and accept her fate like a lady. Naomi heard every word from the hallway. Her pulse was steady now. Not fear, focus. She walked to the bedroom, opened the drawer, and took out a slim leather folder. Inside were copies of her inheritance, her private accounts, and the document proving sole ownership of the condo. The weapons of truth. Tomorrow, the hunter would become the hunted. And for the first time in 25 years, Naomi Sterling would speak without trembling. The sun dipped behind the Washington skyline as Naomi Sterling stood before her mirror, fastening the clasp on her sapphire necklace. Her reflection looked calm, almost regal, the kind of calm that comes after surviving a storm. The dark blue dress hugged her shape modestly. Her hair, swept back into a low bun, shimmered under the soft light. She wasn't dressing for her husband. Not tonight, she was dressing for closure. From the living room, Darren's voice carried. Naomi, are you ready? We're going to be late. Ready, she answered simply. He looked at her, briefly stunned. For a split second, he remembered the woman he once fell in love with, graceful, composed, far too good for him. You look beautiful, he muttered. Thank you, Darren. I wanted tonight to be memorable. If only he knew how right she was. They drove in silence. Rain had stopped, leaving the streets shining like mirrors. Naomi gazed out the window, watching the city lights blur past. In her purse sat the folder, her protection, her revenge, her peace offering to herself. When they arrived at the Watergate Hotel, the ballroom was already glowing. Chandeliers spilled light over crystal glasses and white roses. Waiters in black uniforms carried trays of champagne, and a jazz quartet played softly in the corner. A banner read, Silver Anniversary, Darren and Naomi Price. Guests filled the room with laughter and polite conversation. Naomi recognized many of them, co-workers, family, Darren's business associates, neighbors who once called them the perfect couple. Naomi, darling, you look stunning. Marina, her co-worker, greeted her warmly. 25 years together, how romantic. Yes, Naomi said, smiling faintly. Very romantic indeed. Across the room, she spotted Sierra, younger, glittering in a champagne-colored gown, the smugness of possession in her eyes. Celeste hovered near her son, whispering like a proud general before a victory parade. Naomi felt her heartbeat slow, steady, purposeful. She could almost hear Aisha's words from days before, keep your head clear. Let them think they've won until the very end. The dinner unfolded with uneasy grace. Toasts were made, old friends reminisced. Naomi played her role perfectly, the devoted wife, laughing in the right places, smiling just enough. Then the master of ceremonies took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention? Mr. Darren Price would like to say a few words to honor this special occasion. Naomi's fingers tightened around her glass. The moment had come. Darren stood, adjusting his tie, and took the microphone. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, voice confident. 25 years. That's no small feat. A quarter-century beside one person. It sounds impressive, doesn't it? A few polite chuckles. When Naomi and I married, I believed we'd share every dream. But life changes people. Sometimes, what feels right when you're young turns out to be a mistake. The audience murmured. Naomi could feel eyes turning toward her. "I've realized," Darren continued, "that it's time for both of us to move on. To seek new happiness, even if it means parting ways. So tonight, in front of everyone, I want to be honest. Naomi and I are getting a divorce." A stunned silence fell over the room. Someone dropped a fork. "I wish her all the best," he went on, oblivious to the outrage brewing. "But it's time for a new chapter in my life. I've found someone who truly understands me." He looked at Sierra. The gesture wasn't subtle. The blonde smiled faintly, smug and satisfied. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Celeste clasped her hands proudly. Naomi rose slowly, every eye following her. She reached for the microphone. Her voice steady, almost gentle. "Thank you, Darren," she said. "You're right. The truth deserves to be spoken tonight. But since you've started, allow me to finish." A sharp hush fell. Darren frowned, not expecting her calm. "You see," Naomi continued, "I knew about this little charade weeks ago. About Sierra," she gestured toward the blonde, whose smirk faltered, "and about the lawyer. Mr. Hayes, who's been sitting quietly in the corner all evening." Heads turned. Hayes, caught like a criminal under a spotlight, froze. "I also know about the loans," Naomi said. "The $30,000 you withdrew from our joint account. The plan you and your mother hatched to make me sign away the condo." A murmur of shock swept through the ballroom. "But there's a small detail you overlooked," she added, her voice now sharp as glass. "That condo you're so eager to claim, it was a gift from my parents. Registered in my name before we married. It's legally mine." Darren's face drained of color. "That's not possible." "Oh, it's very possible," Naomi cut in, pulling out the document. "I have proof from the original lawyer who handled the sale." The guests whispered in disbelief. "And one more thing," she said softly, holding up another paper. 3 weeks ago, I inherited over $3 million, a condo in Munich, another in Miami Beach, and cash assets. So, when you said you wanted to divide the property..." She paused. "Which half, exactly, were you referring to? The cabin or your car?" Laughter rippled through the audience, incredulous, nervous, spontaneous. Sierra's eyes darted wildly. Celeste's hand flew to her chest. Darren stammered. "Naomi, we can talk about this." "No, Darren," she said, "we're done talking. You wanted a public scene. And you've got one." She turned to the crowd. "Friends, I apologize for ruining your evening. But after 25 years of silence, it feels good to speak the truth. This man planned to humiliate me tonight. Instead, he's just humiliated himself." A burst of applause erupted from one side of the room. Someone shouted, "You tell him, Naomi." The microphone slipped from Darren's hand and hit the floor with a thud. Sierra tried to slip out quietly, but an older woman blocked her path. "So you're the mistress," the woman spat. "Shame on you." Sierra flushed, snapping, "Mind your own business." But the crowd had already turned against her. "Mr. Price," Naomi's boss, Mr. Boudreau, said sternly, stepping forward, "I'll be reconsidering your position at the company. We can't have executives who humiliate their wives in public." The room buzzed with judgment and shock. Darren's mother tried to intervene. "Everyone, please, it's just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Naomi's friend Candace barked. "You helped plan it." Within minutes, the ballroom had devolved into chaos. Guests argued. Sierra screamed at Darren, "You said we'd have the condo. You promised." Darren tried to hush her, but she yanked her arm away. "Don't touch me. You used me, you pathetic man." She turned to the guests. shouting through tears. "He's broke. He took out loans in his wife's name to buy me jewelry. He's got nothing." Celeste gasped. "Loans? What loans?" Darren's voice cracked. "Mom, I can explain." "Explain what?" Celeste shrieked. "You've ruined everything." Naomi stood still, watching the chaos unravel like a slow-motion car crash. The orchestra had stopped playing. Waiters froze. The perfect night Darren had dreamed of had turned into a public meltdown. Naomi turned to leave. A few guests parted respectfully, some even clapping as she passed. At the doorway, she looked back one last time, at her husband, pale and trembling, surrounded by the wreckage of his lies. "Goodbye, Darren," she said softly. "I wish you all the happiness you deserve." And with that, she stepped out into the night, free at last. Outside, the cold air hit her face like a baptism. For 25 years, she had lived for someone else's comfort, his image, his ego. Tonight, she'd reclaimed her name, her dignity, and her life. The city lights shimmered on the wet pavement as Naomi walked toward a waiting taxi. The driver smiled at her through the mirror. "Beautiful night, ma'am." "Yes," Naomi replied, smiling. "Beautiful indeed." The night after the anniversary party, Washington buzzed with gossip. Within hours, snippets of video from the Watergate Hotel had spread across social media. Naomi's calm speech, Darren's humiliation, Sierra's outburst, the stunned gasps of the audience. The title of one viral clip read, "Silver Anniversary Massacre. Husband dumps wife in public. Gets destroyed instead." By morning, the video had hit 10 million views. Comments poured in like rain. "Queen Naomi for president. Never mess with a woman who knows her worth. He humiliated her in public. She ended his career in front of witnesses." Naomi's phone buzzed nonstop, messages of support from coworkers, old friends, even strangers, but she ignored them all. She had said everything that needed to be said. Instead, she stood by her window, coffee in hand, watching the fog lift over the Potomac. The city below felt new, lighter. For the first time in 25 years, Naomi wasn't Mrs. Price, she was simply Naomi Sterling again. Across town, the picture was very different. Darren Price woke up with a pounding head and a sinking stomach. His mother sat in his apartment's kitchen, her usually flawless hair now disheveled. "Darren," Celeste said coldly, "do you realize what you've done?" "It's not my fault," he shouted. "She humiliated me." "She humiliated you?" Celeste slammed her hand on the table. "You humiliated yourself, and me. The entire Price family name is a laughingstock." She turned on the television. There they were, Naomi's calm voice, the audience gasping, Sierra's furious scream. Even the morning news anchors were laughing about it. Public divorce drama turns into poetic justice. One said, "Seems the husband picked the wrong day to underestimate his wife." Darren groaned, burying his face in his hands. "It's all over, Mom. The company, my reputation, everything." "You think?" she snapped. "Your boss called this morning. You're suspended pending review. Do you know what that means? You'll be fired by Monday." Meanwhile, Naomi spent her morning at her lawyer friend Aisha's office. The mood there was light, almost celebratory. "Naomi Sterling," Aisha grinned, "you've just become an internet legend." "Not exactly what I planned," Naomi said, smiling wryly, "but I'll take it." They reviewed the documents for the official divorce filing. Everything was clear. The Georgetown condo, hers alone. The joint savings, half already transferred. Darren's secret loans, to be assigned entirely to him. "He's going to hate this," Aisha chuckled. "He already does," Naomi replied softly. Aisha leaned forward. "Naomi, you've done something extraordinary. You didn't just survive, you won with dignity." Naomi nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "It's funny," she said quietly. "For years, I thought strength meant keeping quiet, enduring. Now I realize silence only protects the wrong people." That evening, Darren tried to call her. Dozens of times. She let the phone ring. On the last attempt, she finally answered, calm, detached. "Naomi, please, let's talk." There's nothing left to say. Darren. You can't just walk away like this. We can fix it. You had 25 years to fix it, she said. Now I'm fixing myself. She hung up. Outside, thunder rolled again. It felt fitting. Nature's applause for her liberation. 2 days later, Darren's worst fears materialized. His boss, Mr. Boudreau, summoned him to the office, or what used to be his office. The receptionists avoided eye contact. Darren, Boudreau said firmly, your behavior was disgraceful. You've put the company in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. But that was my personal life, Darren argued. You made it public, Boudreau countered, and now everyone associates our brand with a scandal. We're letting you go. They shook hands, coldly, formally, and Darren walked out with a single box of belongings. The man who once bragged about business lunches at the Ritz now couldn't afford one. At the same time, Sierra was in a different kind of trouble. The videos had exposed her face too. Her boss at the marketing firm called her in. Sierra, your behavior's all over the internet. We can't have that representing our brand. But I didn't do anything wrong, she protested. You were part of a public scandal with a married man. Her boss said, we're terminating your contract. Hours later, she posted a furious message online. Men lie. Never trust anyone who says you're his forever when he still wears a wedding ring. Comments poured in, most of them cruel. The internet had crowned Naomi as a symbol of justice, and Sierra as the villain of the week. Naomi, meanwhile, was packing. Her plan was simple: finalize the divorce, sell the cabin, and move into her aunt's condo in Miami Beach. As she folded her clothes, she paused by a photo, her and Darren in their 20s, smiling under a paper wedding arch. She didn't tear it, she didn't curse it. She simply placed it in a drawer and whispered, "Thank you for the lesson." 3 weeks later, court day arrived. Naomi sat calmly beside Aisha in the wood-paneled courtroom. Darren looked smaller now, thinner, gray at the edges, defeated. He avoided her gaze. The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses, reviewed the case. Based on the evidence, she said, the Georgetown property shall remain solely in the possession of Mrs. Naomi Sterling. Mr. Price's claims are dismissed. Darren's lawyer tried to protest, but the judge silenced him with a look. Furthermore, she added, the petitioner, Mr. Price, is responsible for all debts accumulated without spousal consent, including personal loans totaling $43,000. Darren's face went pale. His lawyer sighed. Finally, the marriage between Mr. Price and Mrs. Sterling is hereby dissolved. A soft rap of the gavel, and just like that, 25 years of history ended with a sound like distant thunder. Outside the courthouse, Darren called out, "Naomi, wait." She turned. He stood there clutching his papers, eyes glossy with exhaustion. "I just want to say, I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You didn't deserve any of it." Naomi studied his face, once familiar, now foreign. "I believe you," she said, "but apologies don't rebuild burned bridges. Goodbye, Darren." She walked away, leaving him standing in the gray light, holding the remnants of a life he had destroyed himself. That evening, Naomi sat at a cafe terrace, a soft breeze brushing her face. Her phone buzzed with another notification, her divorce officially registered. She smiled. Freedom had never looked so simple. In her journal, she wrote, "He took 25 years of my time. I took back my peace in one night." When she closed the notebook, her reflection on the window didn't look like a victim anymore. It looked like a woman reborn. 3 months after the court hearing, Naomi Sterling stepped off the plane at Miami International Airport. The humid breeze swept her hair back as she smiled, a soft, free smile that came not from victory, but from peace. The sun above the Atlantic was warm and golden, the sky stretching wide like a promise. She arrived at her new home, the condo her late Aunt Josephine had left her, perched high above Miami Beach. Glass walls opened to a breathtaking view of the ocean. The rhythmic crash of waves below was a constant reminder of movement, of renewal. Naomi placed her suitcase by the doorway and stood silently for a moment. Listening. No shouting. No criticism. No Celeste Price knocking uninvited. Just the sound of the sea, infinite. Forgiving. Welcome home, she whispered to herself. In the following weeks, Naomi adjusted to her new rhythm. She sold the cabin she and Darren once shared, paid off lingering bills, and hired a small team to renovate the Miami condo. Her goal was clear, not just to start over, but to redefine herself. Each morning, she took a walk along the beach, barefoot in the sand, greeting strangers who quickly became familiar faces. By noon, she'd be in her new workspace, a bright room overlooking the water, filled with books, papers, and her laptop. Because Naomi Sterling was no longer an accountant. She was now the founder of Blue Horizon Publishing, a boutique press dedicated to translating European literature, a dream she had once whispered about to Darren, who told her it was a silly hobby. Now, it was her life's purpose. A year earlier, she'd been the invisible half of a marriage. Now, she was signing contracts with authors in Berlin and Paris, mentoring young editors, and publishing stories that resonated with resilience, stories about women who refused to be silenced. Her small company quickly drew attention. Readers praised its elegant editions and heartfelt mission. One journalist called her, "the woman who turned heartbreak into art." Naomi framed that article and hung it above her desk. One afternoon, while reviewing a manuscript, her phone buzzed with a familiar name, Aisha Cole. "Naomi, guess what? Your ex-husband's story is back in the news." Naomi sighed, amused. "What now?" "He's trending again. Apparently, he's driving a rideshare car around DC. Someone recorded him and recognized him from the viral video. It's everywhere." Naomi laughed softly, not out of cruelty, but irony. Life really does have a sense of humor. She thanked Aisha for the call and returned to her work. She didn't gloat, she didn't curse him. She had already let him go. Still, that night, curiosity got the better of her. She looked up the clip. There he was, Darren Price. Once a polished executive, now wearing a faded jacket behind the wheel of an old Toyota. The caption read, "Remember the guy who dumped his wife in public? This is him now." The video had millions of views and endless comments. Karma is punctual. Naomi won without revenge. That's real power. Some lessons cost everything. Naomi turned off the screen, smiled, and whispered, "You got exactly what you deserved, Darren, and I got what I needed, peace." Meanwhile, Sierra had vanished from public view. After losing her job and reputation, she left Washington and reappeared months later on social media, this time as the glamorous wife of a wealthy restaurant owner. Her caption under a photo of diamond rings read, "Sometimes the wrong love teaches you how to find the right one." Naomi saw it once, shook her head, and closed the app. She no longer needed to compare lives. She had everything she truly wanted: stability, respect, and freedom that couldn't be bought with jewelry. By spring, Blue Horizon Publishing was thriving. Her editor, Anna, a bright young woman from Poland, often stayed late, discussing new titles and authors with Naomi. "You know," Anna said one evening, "your story inspired me to leave my toxic relationship. My mom said she saw the anniversary video and cried." Naomi smiled, pouring tea for both of them. "I didn't mean to inspire anyone. I just refused to live small anymore." "That's exactly why you inspire people," Anna replied. They clinked their cups together, two women who had chosen their own paths. One weekend, Naomi received a letter, handwritten, with a shaky signature. The return address, Darren Price. For a moment, she hesitated, then opened it. "Naomi, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I want to say what I couldn't in person. You were right. I destroyed everything that mattered because I thought success meant control. You were the best part of my life, and I was too blind to see it. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted to thank you for showing me who I really was. Be happy. You deserve it. Darren." Naomi folded the letter neatly and placed it in her drawer beside her aunt's old fountain pen. There were no tears, no anger, only calm. He had finally said what she had always wanted to hear, but too late for it to matter. That night, she walked out onto her balcony. Below, the waves shimmered under the moonlight. She could hear the faint sounds of music drifting from the beach, laughter. Footsteps, a guitar. Naomi breathed in deeply, feeling the salt air fill her lungs. "It's strange," she whispered, "how the worst thing that ever happened to me became the best thing that ever happened to me." She lifted her glass in a quiet toast to the ocean. To freedom, to truth, and to new beginnings. Weeks later, she was invited to speak at a women's conference in Miami. The topic: starting over after betrayal. Naomi hesitated at first. She wasn't a speaker. She was a reader, a writer. But Anna encouraged her. "Your story is more than gossip, Naomi, it's hope." On the day of the event, Naomi stood behind the podium, looking at a room full of faces, women of all ages. Some wiping tears before she even began. She didn't talk about revenge or justice. She talked about rediscovery, about the importance of rebuilding a life that feels like yours. "Strength," she said, "isn't about never breaking. It's about learning how to rebuild yourself after you've been shattered." The audience rose in applause. Some women hugged her after the speech, thanking her for giving them courage to walk away from toxic marriages or rebuild after loss. For Naomi, that moment meant more than any fortune, any property, any inheritance. It meant she had turned pain into purpose. That evening, as she walked back along the beach, she saw a young couple laughing, hands intertwined, carefree, in love. Once, that sight might have hurt her. Now, it filled her with warmth. Love wasn't the enemy, blindness was. She smiled, pulled out her phone, and took a picture of the ocean. Caption: "Sometimes, peace is the greatest love story of all." She posted it to her modest account, not expecting much. By morning, it had gone viral again, millions of likes, thousands of comments. The world hadn't forgotten Naomi Sterling. But this time, they weren't celebrating her revenge. They were celebrating her rebirth. That night, Naomi sat by the window of her condo, the waves shimmering like silver under the moonlight. She whispered the same words she had said to herself at the start of her new life. "Welcome home." But this time, it wasn't to a place. It was to herself. Months passed. The world moved on from the viral chaos of the Silver Anniversary Showdown. But for Darren Price, time didn't heal, it punished. He had gone from tailored suits and marble offices to worn-out jeans and the cracked steering wheel of a 10-year-old Toyota Camry. Each morning, he drove through the same streets that once carried him to power lunches and board meetings. Now chauffeuring strangers who never looked him in the eye. The irony was almost poetic. A man who spent decades looking down on people was now being rated by them. 1 star at a time. "Drive faster, man," a passenger snapped one afternoon. "I'm late for work." "Yes, sir," Darren muttered, forcing a hollow smile. His navigation app chirped endlessly, his phone battery dying faster than his pride. In between rides, he scrolled through job listings, none for a man with a scandalous reputation and no savings. Everywhere he went, whispers followed. At gas stations, cafes, even among other drivers. "Hey, aren't you that guy from the viral video? The anniversary thing?" "Yeah," Darren replied stiffly. "That was a long time ago." "Man," the other driver laughed, "your wife roasted you hard. I showed that clip to my girlfriend. Said she's gonna pull a Naomi if I ever mess up." Darren forced a weak laugh. But inside, shame clawed at his chest. He hated the name Naomi Sterling. It had become a symbol. Her strength was legend, his name a punchline. He couldn't escape her shadow. Not in DC, not online, not even in his dreams. His mother, Celeste Price, hadn't fared any better. The once elegant matriarch now lived in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Arlington after selling her mansion to cover legal debts and unpaid loans. She blamed Darren for everything: the humiliation, the loss, the endless pitying looks from her bridge club friends. I told you not to get involved with that blonde, she hissed one evening as Darren entered her apartment, smelling faintly of gasoline and exhaustion. I didn't have a choice. Mom, he muttered, you pushed me into this. You told me to secure the future. I told you to be clever, not suicidal, she snapped, slamming her teacup down. You destroyed our name. I can't even step into the grocery store without someone whispering, that's his mother. What do you want me to do? Darren shouted. I'm driving 12 hours a day just to pay rent. I want my son back, she cried, her voice breaking, the one who used to be somebody. The silence that followed was suffocating. Darren looked at her, frail, tired, a ghost of the woman who once dictated his every move. For the first time in years, he didn't feel anger, only guilt. I'm sorry, Mom, he said quietly. But Celeste didn't answer. She turned away, muttering, sorry doesn't buy redemption. Nights were the hardest. When his last ride ended and the city quieted, Darren parked by the river, staring at the lights shimmering on the water, the same river that reflected the skyline of the condo that once was his home. Sometimes, he imagined Naomi still there, serene, unbothered, probably reading a book with a cup of tea while the ocean breeze touched her face. He wondered if she ever thought of him. Probably not. He took out his phone and opened her old social media page, the one she used for her publishing company. She looked radiant in every photo, smiling with her staff, giving talks at events, walking along the beach in Miami. One caption read, healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means learning to live better. He stared at the line for a long time, his throat tight. You always had the words. He whispered, I only had excuses. A few months later, Celeste fell ill. Years of stress, poor diet, and bitterness had worn her body down. Darren rushed her to the hospital after she collapsed one morning, clutching her chest. As he waited outside the emergency room, guilt gnawed at him like rust on metal. The doctor emerged hours later. Your mother's stable for now, he said, but she needs rest and proper care, and less emotional strain. Darren nodded, relieved but hollow. She doesn't have anyone else, he murmured. It's just me. Then make the most of that, the doctor said gently. He sat by Celeste's bedside for hours, holding her hand while machines beeped softly. Mom, he said quietly, we lost everything, but I'll take care of you. I promise. Her eyelids fluttered open, her voice frail. You can't take care of me until you forgive yourself, Darren. Tears welled in his eyes. For the first time in years, he didn't argue. Weeks turned into months. Darren balanced hospital visits with endless driving shifts. The car became his world, his office, his confessional, his punishment. He avoided routes that passed by Georgetown, afraid to glimpse the condo he once called home. One night, a woman got into his car, elegant, poised, with kind eyes. Good evening, she said. Her perfume was subtle, familiar, not Naomi's, but something reminiscent of gentleness. As they drove, she looked at him through the mirror. You seem tired, she said softly. I've had a long road, he replied, half smiling. Haven't we all? She said. But sometimes, the longest roads lead back to yourself. When he dropped her off, she left a $20 tip and a note scribbled on the receipt. Forgive yourself, life's not over yet. For some reason, Darren couldn't throw it away. He kept that note folded in his wallet, his small, accidental mercy. Meanwhile, Naomi's world continued to blossom. Her publishing house had expanded to New York, her face occasionally appearing in lifestyle magazines under headlines like, The Woman Who Rewrote Her Own Ending. When asked in one interview if she regretted her past, Naomi smiled gently. Regret wastes time. Every chapter of my life, even the painful ones, made me the author of my own story. Darren saw that interview on a diner TV one evening while grabbing a cheap coffee. The waitress recognized her, too. Isn't she amazing? She said. That woman left her cheating husband and built an empire. Love her. Darren forced a faint smile. Yeah, he said, she's something else. As months turned into a year, Darren had changed. He spoke more softly, drove more carefully. He didn't lie, didn't manipulate, didn't chase anything he couldn't earn. He lived simply, a small apartment, a job that paid just enough, and a quiet understanding of what he had thrown away. Sometimes, he still dreamt of that night, the microphone, the gasps, the way Naomi looked at him before walking out. But in those dreams now, he didn't see hatred, he saw closure. He once thought the worst day of his life was losing Naomi Sterling. Now, he understood it was also the day he met himself. One evening, he received a small envelope in the mail. Inside was a thin card from Blue Horizon Publishing. No message. Just a single quote printed in elegant typeface. The truth doesn't destroy, it reveals what was already broken. No signature, but he knew who sent it. He placed the card on his desk and stared at it until the sun rose. Then, for the first time in years, Darren smiled, not out of joy, but acceptance. "You were right, Naomi," he murmured. "The truth set me free, even if it broke me first." He slipped the card into his wallet, next to the note that said, "Forgive yourself." Two small reminders that even broken men could still find redemption, if they were willing to live honestly. A soft autumn wind swept through Arlington that morning, stirring yellow leaves along the quiet sidewalk leading to St. Mary's Hospice. Inside, the sterile scent of antiseptic mingled with the faint sweetness of lilies. Celeste Price lay in bed, pale and thin, her once commanding presence reduced to a whisper of who she had been. The nurse looked up as Darren entered with a paper bag of her favorite pastries, the kind she used to scold him for eating. "Morning, Mrs. Price," the nurse said gently. "Your son's here." Celeste opened her eyes, weak but aware. "Darren," she murmured, "you came." "Of course, Mom." He set the bag down and took her hand, bony now. The fingers that once pointed orders now trembling softly in his palm. "You don't look good," he said, forcing a chuckle. "I don't feel good," she whispered, managing a faint smile. "But at least, you finally listen when I talk." He laughed quietly, but there was sadness in it. "Yeah, I do now. Maybe I should have started 25 years ago." Celeste looked at him with the eyes of a woman who had lived too long in pride. "You know, I used to think control was love," she said, "that if I managed everyone's life, everything would stay perfect, but I destroyed yours, and lost everything that mattered." "You didn't destroy me, Mom, I did that myself." "No, son, I raised you to believe love was power. And when love left you, you didn't know what to do but conquer it. That's on me." Tears slid silently down Darren's face. "I forgive you," he whispered. "Then forgive yourself too," she said softly. "It's the only thing that still matters." Her breathing slowed. The nurse quietly stepped away to give them privacy. "Mom," Darren said, squeezing her hand, "please don't go yet, I need to make things right." She smiled weakly. "Then promise me something, son." "Anything." "Tell her, Naomi, tell her you're sorry, not for the scandal, not for losing the condo, but for never seeing her worth until it was too late." Darren's throat closed. "I will." "Good," she whispered, "then I can rest." Her hand loosened in his. The heart monitor drew out a single, long note. And just like that, Celeste Price, the woman who once commanded every room, left the world in silence. 2 days later, rain fell steadily over the small cemetery. Only a handful of people attended her funeral, the price of living a life built on appearances instead of love. Darren stood alone beside the casket, umbrella trembling in his hand. There were no flowers from Naomi, no message, but he hadn't expected one. Still, as the priest spoke, he imagined her voice in his mind, calm, forgiving, like she had been that night at the Watergate. "You reap what you plant, Darren, but you can always choose to grow again." When the last prayer ended, he lingered, staring at the grave long after everyone had left. "Goodbye, Mom," he murmured, "maybe now we'll both find peace." That evening, Darren drove aimlessly through the city. The roads were slick, streetlights glistening like threads of gold on the wet asphalt. He stopped at a red light and looked across the intersection, and froze. There, under the awning of a cafe, stood Naomi Sterling. Her hair was shorter now, styled elegantly. She was holding a cup of coffee and laughing with a man, tall, silver-haired, wearing a navy suit. She looked radiant, alive in a way he'd never seen before. For a long moment, Darren simply watched. The sight stirred no bitterness, no jealousy, only quiet admiration. When the light turned green, he could have driven away, but something inside him urged otherwise. He pulled over, turned off the engine, and sat there, heart pounding. Naomi noticed him first. Their eyes met through the soft mist of rain. Time didn't stop, but it felt slower. Two lives that had burned together, then apart, stood in quiet acknowledgement of everything they had survived. The man beside her, probably a colleague, said something and went inside. Naomi stayed. She took a step closer to the car, her expression unreadable. Darren rolled down the window halfway. "Naomi?" Her voice was calm, almost kind. "Hello, Darren. I didn't expect to see you here." "Neither did I." The rain pattered softly between them. "You look good," he said, "really good." "Thank you," she replied, "and you look like someone who's finally stopped running." He laughed, surprised. "Maybe I have." For a moment, silence settled, not awkward, just heavy with everything left unsaid. "My mother passed away," he finally said, "yesterday." Naomi's expression softened. "I'm sorry, Darren. Before she died, she asked me to tell you something." "Go on." "That she was wrong. About everything. And that I was, too." Naomi looked at him, not as the man who betrayed her, but as the one who finally understood what he'd lost. "I believe you," she said quietly. "I know it's too late for forgiveness," Darren said, voice breaking slightly, "but I needed you to hear it. You didn't deserve what I did to you." "No one does," she replied softly, "but sometimes we need to lose everything to learn who we really are." He nodded. The rain ran down his windshield like streaks of memory. "Are you happy?" he asked. "I am," she said simply, "not because I moved on from you, but because I moved back into myself." Her words hit him like sunlight through storm clouds. He smiled faintly. "I'm glad." She took a step back, her umbrella catching the light. "Goodbye, Darren." "Goodbye, Naomi." He watched her walk away, her silhouette fading into the rain. It didn't feel like punishment anymore, it felt like release. That night, Darren parked by the river again. Same spot as before. But this time, he didn't stare at the water in despair. He thought about Celeste's last words, Naomi's forgiveness, and the strange peace that followed loss. He pulled the note from his wallet, the one that said "Forgive yourself." He unfolded it slowly, smoothing the wrinkles. Then he took out the card from Blue Horizon Publishing, the quote Naomi had sent. "The truth doesn't destroy, it reveals what was already broken." He read both messages, then set them side by side on the dashboard. Outside, dawn was breaking, pink, gold, and clean. "Maybe this is what freedom feels like," he whispered. He turned the key, started the engine, and drove toward the rising sun. Meanwhile, across the country, Naomi sat in her Miami condo, looking out at the calm waves. She had just returned from her trip to D.C., the conference, the meetings, the unexpected encounter. Her assistant, Anna, entered with a stack of papers. "Everything okay, Naomi?" "Yes," she said, smiling faintly. "Everything's finally okay." She glanced at a new manuscript lying on her desk, a collection of short stories titled The Other Side of Goodbye. Inside, the dedication read, "For those who lost everything, and found themselves instead." Naomi picked up her pen, signed the publication approval, and looked toward the ocean. The tide was rising again, as it always did. And this time, she was ready to meet it without fear. Morning in Miami arrived like a blessing, salt air through open windows. Gulls stitching white arcs across the sky, sun pooling in gold on the living room floor. Naomi stood barefoot on the balcony, coffee in hand, watching the tide pull thin silver threads from the shore and return them. patient as breathing. It felt like the ocean had rewritten her, line by line. Her phone buzzed. Anna. Quick update, Anna said, bright and efficient. The Paris rights closed overnight. Berlin is confirming a launch event. And Madrid just asked if you'd keynote their translation summit. All in one morning? Naomi laughed. Either we're lucky, or the world is smaller than it looks. Both, Anna replied. Also, there's a message from the Miami Arts Council. They want to honor you at their spring gala, for contributions to international literature and women's voices. Their words. Ours, Naomi corrected gently. None of this exists without all of us. She hung up and walked back inside, past stacks of galleys and half-opened cartons. Blue Horizon Publishing had outgrown the sunlit room with the ocean view and spilled into 3 adjacent suites. The shelves carried stories written in Estonian winters, Andalusian summers, Bavarian kitchens. She loved the hum of languages, the way a desk could become a continent. At 10, she crossed the street to Café Orpheus, a quiet spot that smelled of cardamom and butter. The owner, Luca, waved from behind the counter. A silver-haired man with a musician's hands and a habit of remembering everyone's order like a melody. Café au lait, extra hot, he said, sliding the cup across. And the almond croissant you pretend you won't eat. One day I'll resist, Naomi teased. One day, Luca echoed, smiling. They'd met months earlier at a neighborhood book night, when he'd asked a question about translation that turned into an hour-long conversation about voices, time, and belonging. He had a gentleness that didn't apologize for itself, a presence that did not take up space so much as make room for others. They exchanged reading lists, then playlists, then recipes. Somewhere between a Chopin nocturne and a recipe for lemon risotto, something unhurried began to grow. Today, he wiped the counter with a white cloth and nodded toward the window, where the ocean kept speaking in its wordless way. You look lighter, he said. I am, she answered. I went back to DC and said goodbye to a version of myself I don't need anymore. Then you came back to the one you do. Exactly. A group of students burst in, trailing laughter and wet footprints. Naomi stepped aside, and Luca leaned closer. I have tickets, he said, almost shy. String quartet, tonight, Schubert, the one that sounds like the sea thinking. Come with me? I'd like that, she said, surprised by how easily the yes arrived. As she turned to leave, he tapped the counter. Bring a book, we'll stop at the beach afterward. You can read me something you love. Outside, the world felt newly tuned. By noon, the New York office pinged in on video. A grid of editors, publicists, and designers filled the screen, rectangles of concentration and color. Quick wins, said Marta, head of publicity. The viral quote from your talk, strength isn't never breaking, it's learning to rebuild, just passed 5 million shares. We've got an interview request from a global morning show. Let's do it, Naomi said. If we're going to ride a tide, let it be toward better books. And one more thing, added Devon, design-led, the spring catalog cover, ocean gradient, minimal type, and your new imprint mark. He shared the mock-up. A clean horizon line where sea met sky. The blue horizon glyph tucked small in the corner. It looks like breathing, Naomi said, approved. They moved through schedules and print runs, cover foils and author travel, the beautiful logistics that turn dreams into shipments. When the call ended, the room felt both quiet and full. Her email chimed, subject, a letter from a reader. She clicked. Dear Ms. Sterling. I watched your story a year ago and left a man who lived on breaking me quietly. I didn't think books could save me, but I read the novels you published, and they were like doors I could walk through. I'm finishing nursing school next month. I wanted to say thank you for choosing yourself. You helped me choose myself, too. R. Naomi's throat tightened, the good kind of ache. She typed a reply that wasn't elaborate, only honest. You did the brave part. I just held a light while you found the handle. Afternoon brought rehearsals of a different kind. The Miami Arts Council sent a coordinator to talk through the gala. The honoree segment would be brief. A montage of Blue Horizon book jackets. A few lines from the article that called her, the woman who turned heartbreak into art. A short acceptance. Speak from your center, the coordinator urged, not about pain, but what it made possible. I can do that, Naomi said. When the coordinator left, Naomi stood at her window and practiced. Not the words but the feeling. Gratitude without apology. She thought of her younger self. The girl with the ledger and the perfect attendance and the steady, quiet love she had handed to a man who mistook steadiness for absence. She thought of Aunt Josephine in Munich. Stubborn and generous. The woman who sealed the door behind Naomi so new rooms could open. The sky bruised toward evening. She changed into a soft black dress, slipped a book into her bag, an old bilingual edition of Rilke, and walked back to the cafe. Luca was waiting by the door. Closing up early, they drove with the windows cracked, the city exhaling heat into dusk. The concert hall glowed like a lantern. Inside, the quartet took their places, and the first notes moved like a tide setting. Schubert filled the air, longing turning into light, sorrow finding a key that opened into brightness. Luca's hand found hers, palm to palm. Easy. Naomi let her breath match the music. After, they walked to the beach. The moon had lifted clean and white. A small chorus of waves worked the shore. You brought a book. Luca smiled. Naomi lifted it. Rilke, Letters to a Young Poet. This one always returns to me when I'm not sure what to do. Read, he said, and sat beside her on the cool sand. She turned to a passage she had underlined years ago. Long before goodbye became a doorway. Let life happen to you. Believe me, life is in the right. Always. Her voice hovered over the water. When she finished, they didn't speak for a while. Silence did the explaining. You know, Luca said at last, people think love is finding someone who finishes your sentence. But I think it's finding someone who leaves room for your paragraph. And doesn't edit your verbs. Naomi added, smiling. Especially those, he said. They laughed, the kind of laugh that recognizes a shore after long sailing. The next weeks braided ordinary with luminous. Naomi flew to Paris, where the bookstore on Rue de l'Odéon hung a banner with her name and a window full of Blue Horizon titles. She spoke in a room smelling of paper and raincoats, answering questions in English, then French filtered through a translator who turned her certainty into another language without diluting it. In Berlin, an elderly woman pressed a hand to Naomi's cheek and said, in careful English, you remind me of the granddaughter I never had. You tell women the secret, that we are allowed. In Madrid, Naomi sat on a rooftop at midnight, eating oranges with two translators arguing like sisters about a metaphor no dictionary could broker. They called her Jeffa and Compass, Boss and Compass. Back in Miami, the gala shimmered, the stage lights were warm. The montage rolled, covers, faces, spines. Naomi stepped to the microphone, felt her heartbeat settle, and spoke without notes. I thought the worst night of my life would be the end of me. It turned out to be a beginning that arrived without my permission. I was not brave alone. Friends held me, books held me, strangers held me with sentences they wrote in other languages on other coasts. If I have any advice, it is this: let the ending do its work. Then write the page only you can write. The room stood. She didn't cry. She smiled the way cliffs do, not defiant, just sure. Later, at the edge of the dance floor, Luca found her. You were true, he said. So were the cellos, she replied. Come home, he said softly. I made lemon risotto. I'm ready to be judged. I don't judge risotto, she said. I celebrate it. They left early. Not fleeing but choosing. One night, weeks after the gala, Naomi sat on her balcony alone, wind lifting the sheer curtains like sails. She thought of the letter Darren had sent, the one she'd kept. Not as a relic of pain but as a receipt of understanding. She hoped he had made peace with his ghosts. She didn't need to know, only to wish him a life that hurt no one. Her phone buzzed with a message from Anna. A photo of the New York team around a table. Pizza boxes, laughter, a caption. We made your dream a Tuesday. Naomi typed back. You made it a language. Below, the ocean swung its pendulum. She closed her eyes and listened, to the sea, to her breath, to the small, steady metronome of a life aligned. When she opened them, she whispered to the dark, not needing an answer. More of this, more truth, more room. Inside, on her desk, lay tomorrow's to-do list, print signatures, contract notes, a school visit at a community center where she would read to teenage girls who believed they were too messy to be chosen. She would tell them the truth. You are not waiting to be chosen. You are choosing the life that will choose you back. She turned off the lights, left the balcony door open to the hush of the Atlantic, and let sleep come, not as escape, but as shelter. Far out, the horizon held its line, quiet, faithful, brightening even at night. The world was large, her life, larger. And in the middle of it, Naomi Sterling stood, not in triumph, but in clarity. A woman who had learned how to keep walking when the map burned. How to read the stars when the compass failed. How to love a day simply because she had made it honest. The email subject line was plain, unsolicited manuscript. Naomi almost archived it. Blue Horizon's guidelines were clear, agented submissions only. But the sender's initials snagged her eye, SM. She clicked. Working title. What Remains After the Party. Author. Sierra Monroe. Statement of intent. I don't want sympathy. I want to tell the truth about how a person becomes the kind of woman who stands in a ballroom and smiles while another woman is being broken. I want the proceeds to help women leave men like I once believed I needed. Naomi sat back, pulse steady but awake. She read the opening pages. No glamour, no disguises, no blame shifting. The prose was clean in the way a winter window is clean. No curtains to hide behind. Sierra wrote about being raised to measure love in gifts and attention. About confusing hunger for devotion with devotion itself. About the neon thrill of being chosen at the cost of someone else's life. The chapter about the Watergate dripped with accountability. I thought victory would taste like champagne. It tasted like rust. Naomi closed the laptop and stared at the ocean. A gull hung motionless in onshore wind, then tilted its wing and was gone. Anna knocked, stepped in. Read Naomi's expression like a familiar page. Bad news or big news? Neither, Naomi said. Complicated news. They read together, side by side. Anna's brow tightened, then softened. She's not asking for a platform, Anna said. She's asking for a reckoning. And to donate the proceeds, Naomi added, to shelters, to legal clinics. Optics will be noisy, Anna cautioned. Some readers will say we're legitimizing the villain of a story they love you for. And some women will see a door where they thought there was only a wall. Naomi said, but we won't decide on sentiment. We'll decide on standards. She forwarded the manuscript to legal and to Aisha with a note. Eyes wide open. Full fact check. Full consent protocols. Zero glamorization. If this is a book, it must be a net of accountability. Aisha called that evening. You want the honest lawyer brain or the friend heart? Both. Legally, we'll need waivers, redactions, and a truth-first posture. She'll need to own names, dates, money trails. Emotionally, it takes a particular courage to put your ugliest self on the record. Not everyone will forgive her. That can't be the point. It isn't, Naomi said. The point is whether the harm stops with the truth. They set a meeting. Sierra arrived at the office without makeup, wearing a gray sweater and the expression of someone who had rehearsed the worst question. Why should we trust you? And decided to answer it by not flinching. Luca had insisted on dropping by with coffee. He set the cups on the table and squeezed Naomi's shoulder before retreating to the reception area with a nod to Anna. Small kindnesses made difficult rooms breathable. Naomi didn't ask small talk. Why us? She began. Because you won, Sierra said simply. Not the internet, you. The way you carry it. I don't want a publisher who will make me a headline. I want an editor who will make me tell the truth even when I try not to. What changes if this book exists? Naomi asked. I don't know what changes in the world, Sierra said, but I know what changes in me. A closed story keeps rotting. An open one can heal, even if it scars ugly. And the money? All author proceeds to a fund you control, Sierra said, eyes steady. Shelters. Legal aid, translation scholarships, whatever you think repairs the most. Silence held. Outside the window, a squall darkened the water. Then passed. Aisha joined by video. Legal dialed in. Anna took notes. They laid out conditions like stones across a river. Rigorous fact check. No anonymous villains. No softening verbs. Sensitivity reads not to shirk accountability but to guard those still in danger. A foreword by a domestic violence advocate. Every checkpoint public, not performative. Sierra signed every page. When she left, she stood at the door a moment, then turned. I know what I did to you can't be undone, she said, but I can stop doing it. That's what this book is for. Then let the work begin, Naomi said. The internet did what the internet does. Someone leaked that Naomi Sterling had acquired a memoir by The Mistress. Within hours, hashtags hatched like flies. Hashtag platforming predators. Hashtag second chances. Hashtag Naomi why. Naomi posted a statement, brief, unslick, precise. We are publishing a story that accepts harm, names it, and devotes all proceeds to repair. The line between accountability and exploitation is real. We intend to stand on the right side of it. In public, with guardrails you can see. Survivors' organizations are our first partners and last advisors. If we cannot do this without causing more harm, we will not do it at all. Some people softened, some hardened. The only way through a necessary fire is through. Blue Horizon built the scaffolding, the Horizon Fund, seeded by Naomi and pledged the full author share, to support emergency relocations, legal fees, and translator stipends for women fleeing abuse in multilingual households where language itself can be a cage. They announced the Sterling Cole Fellowship, named for Naomi and Aisha, to train pro bono lawyers and court interpreters who understood how paperwork becomes refuge. Anna's inbox flooded with stories. Not everyone wanted to read Sierra, many wanted to be seen. Heard, translated back into themselves. That was the work, too. At night, Naomi walked the beach to quiet the noise. Luca matched her pace without narrating her day back to her. They talked risotto and Rilke and which quartet sounded most like Rain. The world kept room for music. She kept letting it. One evening, an envelope arrived with a DC postmark and no return. Inside, a photo. A park bench under a maple in late afternoon. A small brass plaque. In memory of Celeste Price, 1949 to 2025. May what we tried to control find rest at last. A folded note. Thank you for speaking to me in the rain. I am trying to be the man who deserved that mercy. D. Naomi set the photo on her desk. She did not reply. Mercy didn't always need echoes. Edits with Sierra were surgical. Naomi cut the excuses that had leaked in as narrative glue. Sierra didn't argue. She crossed them out herself and wrote harder sentences in their place. At the final pass, Naomi slid a sticky note onto a paragraph where Sierra had described the thrill of walking into a jewelry store with another woman's money. Don't narrate the light without naming the shadow, Naomi wrote. Sierra rewrote it until the sentence hurt in the way a healed limb aches before a storm. That's the kind of pain readers trust. The cover was a quiet door ajar. No faces, no ballroom, just a threshold and a title that didn't flinch. On announcement day, the backlash returned, then evolved. A coalition of shelters posted a video praising the transparency of the grant structure. A victim's advocate who had declined to blurb the book publicly explained why, and blessed the fund anyway. Complication, for once, was allowed to be honest in a world that starves on simplicity. Naomi turned off her phone and went to the community center where Blue Horizon ran a Thursday workshop. 15 teenage girls, notebooks open, chewing pens like lit fuses. What do we do with shame? One asked. We put handles on it, Naomi said, so it can be moved. They wrote beginnings. They wrote endings. They learned that both are the same muscle, exercised in opposite directions. On press day, a morning show beamed in from New York. The anchor asked the question with teeth. Are you profiting from the pain that made you famous? Naomi smiled, not polished, not defensive. I don't know anyone who survives by hiding what hurt them. She said, we're not selling pain, We're documenting a choice and moving the money in the direction of repair. If the book fails those it claims to help, pull me off the air and hold me to it." Later, the anchor wrote her a private note. "Thank you for answering like a person and not like a brand." 2 weeks before launch, Naomi, Anna, and Aisha met in D.C. with partners from shelters and clinics. They finalized disbursement rules, transparent, audited, survivor-centered. They signed the charter in a borrowed church basement where the paint peeled and the coffee was terrible and hope felt practical. On the way out, Naomi passed the river. She stopped on the pedestrian bridge and looked toward the lights of the city that had once held her old life. She thought of the ballroom and the microphone. She thought of a woman who had to walk out to hear her own voice. Her phone buzzed. "Luca. A photo of a saucepan glistening with saffron broth. Timing your return with the risotto's patience." She texted back. "Add the butter. I'm on my way." When what remains after the party finally landed, it did not make everyone clap. It wasn't designed to. It made some people angrier. It made some women safer. The fund opened a second shelter bed that first month. 3 families got bus tickets and a lawyer in the same week. A Ukrainian interpreter in Miami began training 2 interns paid by a stipend with Sierra's name nowhere on it. Naomi read the final line again. Alone in her office at dusk. "I thought I wanted to be unforgettable. Now I want to be useful." She closed the book and let the room get quiet enough to hear the ocean thinking. Anna leaned in the doorway. "We did a hard thing right," she said. "We did a right thing hard," Naomi corrected gently. "Both matter." They turned off the lights. Back home, Naomi and Luca ate on the balcony. The city hummed below. The tide kept time. He poured them each a little wine. "If you could send one message backward," Luca said, "to the woman you were on the night of the party, what would you say?" Naomi considered. The wind smelled like salt and limes. "I'd tell her the door isn't the only way out," she said. "The window opens, too." "And forward?" he asked. "To the woman I haven't met yet?" Naomi smiled. "I'd tell her I saved her a seat." They clinked glasses, not loudly. Below, a wave unraveled and returned the shore to itself. In the quiet after, Naomi felt something settle that had been hovering for years, legacy not as monument, but as a path others could walk without bleeding. Blue Horizon wasn't just a company now, it was a lantern with a handle large enough for many hands. Tomorrow, there would be numbers to check, meetings to hold, a class to teach where a girl would ask if beginnings have to hurt. Naomi would tell her the truth. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't, but all of them ask for courage somewhere. She gathered the plates, left the door open to the night, and thought of one last page she hadn't written. Not a foreword, not a finale, something like a vow. To keep choosing the life that keeps choosing her back. On a breezy Saturday morning, Miami woke in soft pastels. Pelicans skimmed the water like practiced signatures. Paddleboarders drifted through ripples of light. Naomi measured flour into a bowl while the radio murmured a classical station that occasionally slipped into old boleros. In another life she'd have called this idleness. Now she called it living on purpose. Luca knocked twice and let himself in, carrying a paper bag that smelled suspiciously like citrus and sugar. "Experiment," he announced. "Orange cardamom brioche. Failures will be consumed with dignity." "All our failures deserve butter," Naomi said, kissing him hello. They ate on the balcony, legs tucked into wicker chairs, the city unspooling beneath them. After the second cup of coffee, Naomi opened a folder and slid a sheet across the table. The Blue Horizon glyph sat in the corner, beneath it, a title. The Horizon House, a residence and classroom for restarts. "You were serious," Luca said, eyes brightening. "More than serious," she answered. "We've rented a 2-story Art Deco place 3 blocks from here. 6 beds upstairs, a kitchen that can learn 100 recipes, a library downstairs, and a classroom with a door that opens to a garden. The fund covers the lease. Our authors are sending books. I want the first women inside before hurricane season." "And the teachers?" "Writers, translators, lawyers, nurses, people who know how to leave a map behind." He reached for her hand. You keep building rooms where the world forgot to. Naomi half laughed. I'm just paying toward a debt life forgave. The phone buzzed. Anna. We hit the target, Anna said without preamble. The fund's first quarter covered 12 relocation grants, 4 legal retainer fees, 2 visas, and a pilot interpreter stipend. Also, the party book just crossed 100,000 copies. The audit dashboard is live. Links in your inbox. You are a metronome. Naomi smiled. Come over this afternoon if you can. I want you to see the house before paint. Text me the address, Anna said. And, one more thing. Berlin sent you a letter. Heavy paper. Very official. I put it on your desk. Naomi hung up, curiosity tugging. On her desk lay an envelope with a neat return address from a Bavarian notary. Inside, a short letter and a deed stamped with municipal crests. The apartment in Munich. Legally transferred. Taxes settled. No liens. Enclosed. A photo she didn't expect. A sepia image of Aunt Josephine standing in front of a bookshop in 1963. Hair in a scarf. Eyes laughing at something just out of frame. On the back, a note in looping German. Für das Mädchen mit dem offenen Fenster. For the girl with the open window. Naomi felt her throat tighten and pressed the photo to her heart. Even across decades, women were leaving each other doors. That afternoon, the house smelled of dust and primer. A painter's radio whispered salsa. In the kitchen, Naomi measured sunlight where a table would go, in the garden. A bougainvillea insisted on magenta. Anna arrived with a tape measure and a roll of painter's tape like a general armed with benevolence. We're keeping the arched doorway, Anna decreed, but that ceiling fan must go. Agreed, Naomi said. Also, the library needs a big farm table. People should argue about metaphors with their elbows on wood. They looked up as a shy knock sounded at the open door. A woman stood there with a toddler on her hip and a teenage girl at her side. The girl held a printed flyer. Free weekly writing workshop, Blue Horizon. We saw the sign. The woman said softly, Are we early? You're right on time, Naomi said, voice warm. We're not finished building, but the table is real enough to begin. They sat on the floor with clipboards because chairs would come later. The toddler slept against his mother's shoulder. The teenager wrote with urgent, slanted lines. When she read aloud, the room changed shape, air, light, the angle of what mattered. Is this any good? The girl asked, trying to sound casual, trying not to shake. Naomi smiled the way you do when you recognize a landmark. It's better than good. It's honest. Keep your verbs fierce. Don't apologize for the bright parts or the broken parts. The mother whispered, Thank you, with the kind of gratitude that could knock a person to their knees. After they left, Luca leaned against the doorway. Paint in his hair. There it was, he said. What? The reason for the house. Naomi nodded. Sometimes legacy fits in a single page of a notebook. Across the country, DC wore spring like a new shirt. Aisha texted a photo of the bench under the maple, the plaque polished by weather and touch. Court update, she wrote. 2 of our fellowship lawyers won emergency orders today. Also, tell Luca his risotto is now a unit of time in the office. I'll be there in 1 risotto. Naomi laughed out loud and sent a picture of the Horizon House's garden. Bring your robe and a gavel. We need you to christen the library. A minute later, a different message lit her screen. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Then read. Naomi, it's Darren. No ask, no excuse. Just a report. I've been sober a year. I volunteer twice a week driving people to appointments who can't pay. I paid off 1 loan. I planted tomatoes on my fire escape. I don't know if redemption is real, but usefulness is. Thank you for that rainy day. Be well, D. She stood very still and let the complicated mercy pass through her. Then she replied with a single line. I'm glad you're useful. Keep going. No punctuation, no signature. Enough. The party book tour rolled through cities like weather fronts, some gentle, some hard. Sierra sat on panels beside advocates and never centered herself when the questions turned jagged. When hecklers came, she let them come. In Houston, a woman stood and said, I will never forgive you. Sierra bowed her head and answered, "Forgiveness isn't a ticket I can demand. I'm here to move money and tell the truth." The room, uncertain whether to clap, settled for silence that didn't sting. Naomi watched from the wings and understood. The work was working. Numbers followed, but quietly. Grants disbursed. Receipts logged. Beds filled. Ticket stubs saved by women who traveled in the night. On the horizon dashboard, the curves and bars said "Remain steady." Naomi liked charts that bowed to lives. Summer declared itself. The Horizon house opened with lemon water, dollar store flowers, and a ribbon scissored by a woman who had crossed 2 borders with a child and a phrasebook. In the library, the farm table bore its first dents. On the wall, a framed page read, "Enter as you are, leave with your own sentence." One evening, after a workshop, Naomi and Luca walked the beach, sandals dangling from their fingers. The moon lifted grand as a confidence. He stopped where the tide line kissed their toes and reached into his pocket. "No spectacle," he said, smiling. A simple ring gleamed, a small stone. A band that would not snag a sweater or upstage a paragraph. "We can call it whatever you like. Promise. Partnership. The rest of our morning's agreement. I want to be your ordinary." Naomi felt joy arrive the way morning does, first light, then warmth, then the whole day. She didn't think of the old vow. Not in fear or comparison. She thought of bread proofing. Of paint drying. Of sentences that knew where they were going. "Yes," she said, voice steady. "Let's promise to be ordinary and protect it like art." He slid the ring onto her finger. The ocean applauded in small, tireless hands. In September, Naomi flew to Munich for a quiet ceremony. A bookstore plaque dedicated to Aunt Josephine, the woman who left doors like breadcrumbs. She read a passage in German with careful mouth and happy mistakes. The audience clapped in the gentle way Europeans clap for sincerity. Later, an elderly bookseller pressed a key into her palm. "The upstairs reading room," the woman said. "It is yours whenever you are in the city. The lock knows your step now." Naomi carried the key like a charm all the way back across the Atlantic. In Miami that night, jet-lagged and grinning, she unlocked her own front door and set the key beside her ring in a small dish. Thresholds. Everywhere. The year folded itself with the tender efficiency of someone who knows how to pack a suitcase. Launches. Workshops. Dinners. A piano recital where Luca's left hand wove rain under a melody that sounded a little like forgiveness. On the last Friday of the year, Blue Horizon hosted an open house. The library buzzed. Women read. Men listened. Children drew maps of imaginary islands and named them after fruit. When it quieted, Naomi stood alone in the doorway and counted, not money, not metrics, but the arithmetic of things that actually added up. The girl who returned with a college acceptance. The boy who learned his mother's language for the first time. The volunteer who stopped calling himself broken and started calling himself early. Aisha slipped in, coat over one arm, grin inevitable, judge present. She said, "Verdict. You turned a story into infrastructure." Naomi bumped her shoulder. Appeal denied. They laughed. Then they were quiet, and the quiet was good. That night, Naomi wrote 3 lines on a card and taped it inside the Horizon house door at eye level where anyone leaving would see. "You are not from your worst day. You are not from his opinion. You are from the courage that brought you here." She locked up, pocketed the key, and walked home under a sky clear as certainty. On the balcony, the city hummed its midnight lullaby. She texted Anna a photo of the sign, sent Aisha a heart, sent Luca a single word, "Home." He replied with a picture of a pot risottoing itself into patience. Naomi slipped off her shoes and stood where ocean met air. The horizon, faithful as ever, held its straight-laced promise. She thought of the girl at the workshop, the bench under the maple, the bookstore key, the ring that didn't want applause. The worst night of her life had not been an ending, and the best days were not fireworks. The truth had not destroyed her. It had simply shown her which doors to close and which to open with both hands. She raised her glass to the dark water and whispered, as if the tide were a friend in the next room. More rooms, more light, more women leaving with their own sentences. And the sea, in its ancient grammar, answered the only way it knows how, by returning. By staying. By carrying everything that dared float. Fade to black.